We're not going to be talking movies, at least not at the very beginning of episode number 2. I want to talk about a special on this day in sports history. If you look at my shirt here, it's a comic strip basically, but a very special on this day is that on this day in 1966, one of the world's greatest athletes, sportsmen, public figures, and a man who for a time in the 1970s was the most recognizable human being on the planet, Muhammad Ali, fought what everyone from Mike Tyson on down believes to be not his greatest fight, but his greatest performance, his greatest athletic display as a sportsman. It happened in the Houston Astrodome, November 14, 1966, so 57 years ago to the day. And Ali was 24, and he was defending his title for, I believe it was the sixth time since winning the title. It was either sixth or seventh. That part I don't remember offhand. But he fought a kind of past his prime former contender who was still in the top 10, but he wasn't what he had been, by the name of Cleveland Williams, who was known as the Big Cat. He was a very muscular, almost a bodybuilder-ish looking guy who could really, really punch. And he went out there and pretty much embarrassed his opponent with a display of blinding speed, grace, and power, the likes of which really never been seen in the kind of brutal sport of boxing before or since. Now, the t-shirt itself is a quote that Ali came up with, which was later used by Quentin Tarantino in the movie Reservoir Dogs. It's a scene between when the guys are in the coffee shop chatting. So I told you we always get to movies, can't help it. But Harvey Keitel and Michael Madsen are having, I don't know if you would call it an argument, spirited debate, heated discussion, but it's a little bit of what we would call a dick measuring contest, where each one is trying to size up the other. You can tell they're not going to like each other. They have to work together. And the original line is, if you even dream of beating me, you better wake up and apologize. That's what the shirt says. In the movie, it said Michael Madsen, pretend, wink, wink, threatens to shoot Harvey Keitel. And Keitel laughs and says, if you shoot me in a dream, you better wake up and apologize. So on this particular night, November 14, 1966, the man who most people consider the GOAT, this kind of pound-for-pound most talented and arguably toughest boxer who ever lived, Muhammad Ali, put on this command performance, a little over 7 minutes. He spent the first round just kind of sizing his opponent up, seeing what Cleveland Williams was going to have to offer that night. And Williams had difficulty really doing anything. And then in the second round, the champ, Muhammad Ali, as I say, had been heavyweight champ for about 2 years and 9 months at the time. And it's arguable he may possibly have won every round that he had fought as a champion until that point. He was just on another level to any of the other fighters at that particular time. Sonny Liston was gone. He beat Sonny twice. The second time was the infamous first round Phantom Punch. Floyd Patterson had no chance. The only fight up to that point of his, title reign, of him being in his prime, was the Mildenberger fight in Germany. Karl Mildenberger was really, really tough. But most pundits felt that even though Mildenberger landed some shots, he actually hit Ali in the, in lower, like in the body, the rib cage, and seemed to rattle him a couple of times. But Joe Lewis, who was doing the commentary, he said, I think the champ won every round. I mean, Carl put up a good fight, but he just, can't really hurt this guy. What are you supposed to do? You can't hit him. Can't square him up. Maybe once at a time, you take a shot at him. So Ali in the second round of the Williams fight, and history is grateful for the fact that there are some very good recordings of this fight available on YouTube. And no less an authority on combat sports, Joe Rogan has discussed this fight many times on his program, and he really loves watching video and talking about it with guests who know boxing, and just kind of marveling at this 215-pound guy who is moving around the ring like Floyd Mayweather circa 2005. He's that fast. He's delivering punches that quickly, and he's hitting with the power of a heavyweight. Now, Williams was no shrinking violet. And in round two, Ali knocks the big cat down 3 times. And the knockdown at the end of the round would have ended the fight, except for that weird rule. Well, maybe it's not a weird rule. What do you think? Where the fighter could literally be saved by the bell. So if you go ahead and you watch the Ali Williams fight, at the end of the second round, Cleveland's gone down twice. He goes down a third time from just an amazing right-left-right combo. And he doesn't just go down, he goes down flat. And there's a famous picture. It's one of the most famous pictures of Ali, other than the phantom punch shot of him, where if you don't know what you're looking at, you're saying, what's he doing? Seems like he's screaming at his opponent. That's a whole other story. But there's another amazing picture by, I believe, the same photographer, Neil Leifer of Sports Illustrated, where Cleveland Williams is stretched out on the canvas with his arms fully behind his head and his about as far back as they can go, and Ali walking to the neutral corner away from him. And the referee starts his count, and when he gets to about, I'm not sure if it was 5 or 6, and Williams had moved, but the fight was over. But then the bell rings, and the big cat's corner comes over and helps him to his feet and to his stool. And if this happened today, this is not a criticism, this is a reality, I believe the fight would have been stopped, even if they had this rule. Because certain states, another thing that I always thought was weird, had different rules as far as these things go, where in this particular state or this boxing commission, the 3 knockdown rule ends the fight. There was another famous Ali fight where, this was later after he made his comeback, where he fought Oscar Bonavena, and fight was up for grabs. And as it turned out, Ali was ahead on the cards, but going into the 15th, both guys looked tired. Both guys had rattled and hurt the other. And Ali was, he fought a tough fight, but Bonavena was, the only time he ever got stopped was this particular fight. And he fought the best of his era. But in the 15th round, that particular fight at Madison Square Garden, if a fighter got knocked down 3 times, even if he seemed okay, again, relatively speaking, think of how exhausted somebody would be at the end of a 15-round fight. But the referee could allow the fight to continue. But if there was a specific 3 knockdown rule, the fight's over. And in the case of the Ali Bonavena fight, unlike Ali Williams, where the third time Williams went down, it would have made sense if there was a 3 knockdown rule, because for all intents and purposes, that fight was done. It was over. Cleveland, you gave it your best, but you can't keep up with this guy anymore. He's just too good. But in the Bonavena fight, early in the 15th round, Ali, both guys were just winging. They were tired, landed a big left hook on Bonavena, and Bonavena stumbled and staggered and fell. And then he made the classic, if you want to call it a mistake, he got up too fast. He knew where he was. He was wobbly, but they always they tell fighters, if you know what's going on, don't get up right away. If you don't know what's going on, it doesn't matter. The fight's going to be, you're doomed, because you could just stand up and stagger. But if you have any idea, give yourself a few seconds to get your legs on you, because sometimes it's as simple as like 3 or 4 seconds, where if you stand, your legs are going to give way. And if you wait until a count of, let's say, 8, instead of trying to jump up at 3, your legs, especially if you're as well trained as most of these fighters are, your legs will be sturdy under you. So Bonavena in that fight, and that's another where the video is just amazing, he gets up too fast, and Ali is doing something you're not supposed to do. He's not following the referee's instructions. He's supposed to go to a neutral corner, and he's not really. He's kind of prancing around the ring because he knows, hey, I got a chance to end this fight, and he's sort of pushing the limit. I feel like if he did it now, the referee would not just admonish him, because the referee was giving him the business, but then he was continuing to do the count, and he was letting him at Bonavena. But Bonavena goes down once, and his legs, he's all screwed up. His equilibrium, you can tell, is messed up, and he should have stayed down. He gets up. He doesn't really get hit that hard. He stumbles to the ground a second time, and then Howard Cosell, you know, who was Ali's friend and kind of foil, the two of them were an unbelievable double act over the years. And Cosell starts screaming, if he goes down again, the fight's over, because Howard knew the rules, and not everybody may have been aware of it. And in that fight, you go 14 rounds with no knockdowns. You're not expecting, oh yeah, well, the 3 knockdown rule is in effect. They probably were expecting a fight to go to the cards, and there were going to be no knockdowns. So Cosell's yelling about, if he goes down again, the fight's going to be over. And just as soon as that, he barely gets hit, his legs are not there, and Oscar, whose nickname was Ringo because he kind of looked like Ringo Starr, goes down for the 3rd time, and that's it. The ref doesn't have to count. You see the ref literally going like this, and Cosell screaming, and the fight's over. But when you rewind back to 1966, Cleveland Williams, was just over 4 years prior, the Williams fight. Williams goes down the 3rd time. The ref almost literally, his corner almost literally drags him back to the stool. And then the fight continues in the 3rd round, but it doesn't go very far. Williams is just getting smashed and goes down again. And then when he's getting pounded, the ref just steps in and stops the fight. And there are videos on YouTube of not so much the Mike Tysons of the world who are in the sport and who understand boxing from the inside out, and just what sort of skill level we're talking about to do what the young champ did in that fight. But people who have analyzed each moment, literally, of Ali Williams to almost portray the idea that this is as good as this barbaric, brutal sport can be. And, you know, Ali lands some bombs on Cleveland Williams, like some consciousness losing bombs on Williams. So it's not like, you know, they used to talk about Ali where, well, you know, he wasn't as brutal as other fighters, and he moved around a lot, and he just sort of very artfully rendered his opponents incapacitated. And that's true to some extent, but this particular fight, when he knew that he had Williams hurt, he was not taking it easy. He wanted to end the fight, but he wasn't like, well, I'm gonna backpedal a little bit. No, he's throwing shots to end the fight. And that last punch at the end of the 2nd round is one of the cleanest shots he ever landed. And Williams, it was incredible that he was able to continue even with the help of his corner. So when you take a career in summation, when you look back on the prime of a great athlete, in this case, boxing, the general consensus, as I say, from the Mike Tysons, and we know Tyson loved Ali. It's a cliche to say loved him like a father. That, I mean, they knew each other well, but they didn't have that kind of a relationship. But he loved him, and he was his idol growing up. That's true. And then because of Mike's ups and downs and some of the sort of vague similarities between the way that their careers unfolded, it was somebody for Mike to look up to, and somebody that he always, even when Mike was, you know, kind of at his angriest and where you never knew what he was going to do, even with like the Lennox Lewis where he's yelling at reporters and stuff like that. But Mike always had the deepest respect possible for Ali. You know, and of course, one of the great bits of trivia is that there are 2 men who fought both, Larry Holmes and Trevor Berbick. Not coincidentally, because the age difference between Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali was 24 years. Ali born January 42, and I believe Mike was born in 1966, if I'm not mistaken. But Ali's last 2 fights, and really his last probably 5 fights, never should have happened. He was allowed to, you know, continue in the ring long past what was medically viable. And this is, people talk about society getting soft, but in this instance, he would not have been allowed to fight after probably the Ernie Shavers fight in the fall of '77, because he was showing significant, this is Ali, unfortunately, significant physical and neurological deterioration. The fact that he was able to still fight at a high level, it just showed that he was so gifted, and this is not really a good thing, that even in a very compromised state, and we're not talking about age, you see fighters now in their mid-30s that are still firing almost on all cylinders, that are close to what they had been. I mean, Floyd Mayweather had a very long near prime. You look at guys like Roberto Duran, who fought at an incredibly high level for 15 years. Like, that's not the norm. But Ali supposedly was starting to have trouble passing just basic coordination tests. And he was still going out there and dodging punches and moving around the ring and hitting. And but I digress. He lost to Larry Holmes in 1980, Ali that is, when Holmes was the champ. Ali had retired, and there were unfortunate rumors that despite the fact that he made $60-some million in purses over the years, that he was having financial trouble. He had a lot of unscrupulous people working with him, and there's an idea that some in his inner circle were actually stealing money from the guy. And we all know he was extremely charitable. One of his great quotes, and he was really a quote machine over the years, was service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And he took that very seriously and did try to be charitable and spread his fortune and goodwill wherever he went, even when he was very compromised in his later years. But Ali fought Larry Holmes, I believe it was December 2nd, 1980, and the fight should never have happened. And this was a situation where Holmes was trying to win, and Holmes had worked for Ali. He was Ali's sparring partner. And Holmes talked about and has discussed the fact that he loved Ali. And, there's that famous story of Mike Tyson getting revenge for Ali. And I feel like that's a little bit overplayed, because it's not like Holmes went out of his way, I got to beat this guy. The fight shouldn't have happened. But Larry went out there and did what he had to do. And Ali was sick. He was not physically sound, neurologically should not have been in the ring. And the fight it's horrible to watch. That even just a couple of years earlier, it would have at least been competitive. Then Ali, despite being somewhat compromised, would have been able to at least throw some punches. But the fight should not have happened. It was borderline criminal that it was allowed. And then the next year, inexplicably at age 39, after the disaster with the Holmes fight, Ali was a guy who never wanted to quit, never wanted to give up. He was going to keep going out there, and Holmes was just going to keep hitting him in the ribs, hitting him in the chin, everywhere. And Ali's corner threw in the towel after the 10th round. There was no reason for it to continue. We couldn't win. What was the point of another 20 minutes of humiliation? So Ali then fought Trevor Berbick the following year, and Berbick famously had a preposterous feud with the same Larry Holmes. And that fight, again, it's horrible that it was allowed to take place, but that fight was competitive. It went the distance, and there were some people that actually thought Ali deserved the decision. I don't. I think Berbick won the fight because he was in his prime. But that at least was a more representative, where the fight was watchable. Ali could barely move. He seemed to be having trouble delivering punches. But if you didn't know that, you would say, okay, well, this guy in the white trunks he's just old. That's probably why he can't really move around the way that he used to or whatever. So Mike Tyson, I mentioned Larry Holmes and Trevor Berbick. Mike Tyson beat Trevor Berbick to win the heavyweight championship. The so-called linear, I would assume that would be the linear title belt, and famously becoming the youngest person to ever do it. I think Mike was 20, which is extraordinary. And that was a record that the young Ali, as Cassius Clay, had always wanted, which was Floyd Patterson's record, which was the record that Tyson, in fact, broke for the youngest person to win the heavyweight title. So one of the guys, Ali's last fight, Trevor Berbick, late in 1981, I think it was it December 11th? 1981. And then about 5 years later, Mike Tyson beats the same Trevor Berbick, the last fight of Ali's career, beats that guy for the title belt. Like, that's very weird when you look at it and say, man, these guys were so far apart in age, and this guy, Ali, fought Berbick, and then 5 years later, Berbick's the champ, and Tyson, almost takes his head off. And as history tells us, Tyson had a number of pretty easy title defenses, And then he fought Larry Holmes, who ironically had more left in the tank than he should have. Holmes was, I believe, 38 when he fought Tyson, and Tyson just really ran through him. He absolutely ran through him. But yeah, I knowing that, and Larry Holmes, after the Ali fight, went into Ali's dressing room and was crying, and he said something to the effect of, this was actually in a movie about Don King. I believe it was the film with Ving Rhames about Don King, where the actor, was it Darius McCrary? The actor who played Ali, the actor who played Larry Holmes, and Holmes is pretty much crying. He's like, champ, this is terrible that they made me do this. I owe you everything. And he said, I'm gonna do everything I can if you still need help. You know that I'm here for you. I hate that we had to fight. And the actor who plays Ali said something like, Don King gets through with you, you won't have any money either. So there were people who really felt that Don King was, I don't really know that, history doesn't tell us that Don King stole from Ali. There were other people that were screwing around with his finances. But I digress. So those are the two guys, Trevor Berbick and Larry Holmes, that fought both Ali and Mike Tyson. Tyson ran through both of them. They both had beaten Ali. And again, one fight was at least reasonably close, and the other fight was just horrendous. The Holmes fight was just horrible. But there is that one fight, Mike Tyson and Ali both had this in common, which is there is one magical night in each of their respective careers where they appeared to be unbeatable. And in Tyson's case, it was the Spinks fight. When he took on, actually it was not, now that I'm thinking about it, he wasn't a lineal champion because I believe Spinks held half of the belt. And it was kind of a unification fight. And Spinks had won the title from Larry Holmes, handing Holmes his first defeat in '85. But there are certain, there's no way that Michael Spinks, a great light heavyweight, and a solid heavyweight, not quite Evander Holyfield level, because Evander started, at the light heavy and cruisers and then moved up to heavyweights. But Michael Spinks was a terrific fighter. But he had no chance. And I watched, and many people of Generation X who were into boxing, we watched Tyson and Spinks live. It was one of the early big pay-per-views, and I believe it was $50 in 1988 spring. I mean, $50 is not cheap now, so you start doing the math. It was a pretty expensive pay-per-view, and it was a 93-second demolition. So the Ali of the Cleveland Williams fight, you watch him out of context, he appears to be the finest fighting machine ever assembled. Fast as lightning, incredibly elusive. They say, well, Ali runs around the ring with his hands down. It's just a matter of time before somebody hits. Can you hit him? Because in that fight, he got hit, I think, twice, and neither one was particularly square. But he appeared to be invincible that night. Sonny Liston, the two times that he demolished Floyd Patterson in 1962 and 1963, he appeared to be invincible. And then he ran into young Cassius Clay, a.k.a. Muhammad Ali. Mike Tyson, the best, in my opinion, representation of him in his prime is the Spinks fight. Even though similar to Cleveland Williams with Ali in the sense that he was not fighting a guy who had a realistic shot, but just in terms of the incredible skill that both men possessed. And Mike Tyson, boxing historians consider him an underachiever because he was so talented. Tyson could hit like hell. He had huge power in both hands. He was fast. He had the great head movement, and he had the old Customato Floyd Patterson peekaboo defense. He was terrific. His movement in the ring, his ability to cut the ring off on hurt fighters, was up there with Foreman's. George Foreman's a guy who was considered a plotter, but man, Foreman's footwork was on point. Tyson also had great footwork. And you watch him against Spinks, all 93 seconds of it, and you see there is no escape for Spinks. That is a situation where I don't even believe that Spinks could have won one fight out of 100. That is how terrible of a mismatch that was. And that's the same how I feel about the Cleveland Williams versus Ali fight. That, yeah, Williams could still hit, but as we saw, Ali could take a shot, even in his younger days. The Henry Cooper where Cooper famously almost knocked him out of the ring. He would have won the fight if he had managed to get Ali out of the ring. But that was the hardest that Ali got hit, and he was probably 15 pounds lighter than when he fought Cleveland Williams. And Williams could hit, but not like Henry Cooper. So I feel like Mike Tyson, if you ran simulation, 100 times of Ali versus Cleveland Williams and 100 times Mike Tyson versus Spinks, both of those guys win every run out. They don't lose any of those fights. So, anyway, my t-shirt, Beat Me in a Dream, You Better Wake Up and Apologize. And my hat is from a collector's comic, a DC collector's comic called Superman versus Muhammad Ali, which came out in 1977, Ali's second reign as champion. Again, there's so much to that man's life. He's my single favorite historical figure in the history of anything. But his second run as champion, which began in 74, it was a long road back, again, way too involved to get into in 2 minutes. But DC had an idea for a comic, and they got some of their best drafters, some of their best artists and graphics people to do it. And it's a one-off. It was a collector edition, kind of a hardcover, well, at least I have a hardcover version of the book. And it's a lot of fun. Not surprisingly, the only way for the two guys to fight fair is for Superman to not have his superpowers. So the two guys fight at a neutral site, but the upshot of the comic is that they end up working together to save the planet Earth. And it's dopey and silly, but it's cool as fuck. And that's the kind of thing you could find at your local library. I ordered my own copy from Amazon, and then I got this nice hat. Where people are always asking me, well, who is that? Somebody thought that they didn't look, which said, oh, is it Tyson's fighting Ali? I said, no, it was Tyson fighting Superman. I said, no, it's Ali. And then you go into, they fight to see who is Earth's greatest fighter or mightiest fighter. Again, it's complete ridicularity. But Ali beats the non-superpowered Superman. Man, he really beats the crap out of him, too. Superman's all bloodied and bruised up. But then once Superman gets his powers back, in a quarter of a second, he's back to, moving rivers with his eyes and all that other shit that Superman is famous for. So, anyway, that is the story of November 14, 1966, Muhammad Ali versus Cleveland Big Cat Williams in one of the greatest performances by any sportsman, certainly of the 20th century. And it's worth looking up on YouTube just to check out, because maybe I'm overstating the case. But you could even just go to, if you type in Joe Rogan, Ali Williams, you'll see a number of hits where Rogan, and they show clips from the fight, and Rogan will talk his guests through it, because he always says he can't get enough of that. It's so good to watch. It's so incredible to watch a 215-pound guy with the grace of a ballerina, literally, moving around the ring faster than Floyd Mayweather, faster than Ray Robinson. It's something to behold. So that's the end of episode number 2. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening. This is the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast.